Hey everyone, I'm excited to be here. Today we're going to get into what are the 4 levels of intimacy. Intimacy and relationship are things that I see as dwindling within modern society as we're growing, as we're evolving technologically. Technology has this funny way of making people feel connected to anyone in the world. Hey, William, good to see you. Well, at the same time, it allows people to feel disconnected from their immediate environment and their immediate relationships. So in this live, I'm going to dive deep into the levels of intimacy and how you can understand how it's developed. I think it's really important to recognize how intimacy is created and how true relationship is created so you can see yourself go through the stages. Hey, good to see you, Moon Dancer. Because one of the biggest things that I see when individuals get into relationship is there's always that honeymoon stage, right? Have you guys ever had this where it's the honeymoon stage, everything seems really, really nice and fantastic in the beginning, and then all of a sudden things start going downhill? Well, the reality of that is that's inevitable pretty much in any relationship, and it's because there's certain stages that we need to be aware of when we're developing an intimate relationship. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you guys the 4 stages of intimacy and how intimacy is built over time. And if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you have any comments, feel free to share the comments, feel free to ask the questions, and I'll address them as we go. In terms of the questions, I'll get to them at the end of this. We will take some time to do a Q&A and go a little bit deeper. Sound good? Awesome. Hey, good to see you, Robin. So really, when it comes to intimacy, there's 4 stages. There's 4 stages that we need to be aware of. Intimacy is something that comes over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen over 6 months. It can take even years. But when you know the stages of intimacy and creating relationship, and you're aware of how to of every stage of every stage of this entire process, you can recognize when you go into one stage, and it makes it easier to navigate that stage. That's what this is all about. Most people in the world, I would say right now, because of where, or at least in modern societies, because of where we're at, they're not aware of how relationship and intimacy develops. And so when they get into a new stage of intimacy or a deeper part of the relationship, what happens is they're confused. They feel new emotions of anxiety or worry or concern because they don't understand what's happening. When in reality, all that's happening is the relationship is just deepening. And it might not appear to be good at first. Does that make sense, you guys? So it's really important here to understand the stages of intimacy and how we develop in relationship, so you can be aware. Hey, Tracy, good to see you. So you can be aware of when you enter into the next stage of a relationship. Life is so much easier when you understand what's happening. So many times when I'm coaching a client, for instance, one of my clients right now, she's entering into a different relationship. And with her, she didn't realize that she was in this new stage. And so she was starting to have anxiety and worry because she didn't understand what was happening, because she had never made it that far into the pair bonding intimacy relationship process. She had never gone that deep in relationship. And she shared with me, she was like, Jared, I'm doing things that I never would have done before in the past. I don't know what's happening. This feels really weird. And all I told her was, I just said, all that's happening is you're learning a whole new level of deepening a relationship. You've never gone this far. So being this vulnerable, being this open, it may feel a little bit scary, but it's okay. It's normal. You just haven't gone this deep yet. Does that make sense, everyone? So when we can understand our experience of being human, it tends to make things easier. There's one of my mentors, Michael, one of his mentors has a really great quote that says, if human beings can learn to not be afraid of their experience, that in itself is a really amazing gift. And I've found that I transition into new parts of my life when I understand at the mental level what's happening, which is why I share and do a lot of these videos. So let's get into this. And guys, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts or comments as we go along here, feel free to put them in the comment section, and we'll go a little bit deeper, and I'll bring the comments, or I'll bring the thoughts or questions up on the screen and answer them. But as I'm doing the presentation, I'll go in and out however it feels right, whatever the flow of it is. All right, beautiful. So the first level of intimacy is called pseudo intimacy, right? Now, what is pseudo intimacy? Pseudo intimacy is that stage where intimacy isn't real, but because we're in the honeymoon phase, we're experiencing what we think is real intimacy. And all that's happening is our body is basically on a high. Our brain releases oxytocin, and with this release of oxytocin, we begin to experience levels of trust. We begin to experience really good feelings within our body. And so we automatically think that in that space of getting this overwhelm of oxytocin, our brain starts looking for commonalities. And it starts looking for commonalities over differences. Have you guys ever experienced this? Have you guys had this experience? So it's like you'll get into a new relationship, and within the first month, you find out that you like all these similar things, and it feels really good, and everything feels like it was meant to be. You see, oh yeah, you like this band, I like that band. Oh my gosh, I like this color, you like that color. And so it's pseudo intimacy, and pseudo intimacy is created because we have that high release of oxytocin in that moment. So that high release of oxytocin, it basically blows the brain up, allows the body to feel safe and feel good. It's a feel good chemical. And what happens is we start to perceive that person as very similar to us. But the reality of it is they have a lot more differences as well. Everything in life, guys, you can find a commonality for. I guarantee you. William, I'll get into the commonalities versus the differences here. So I'm going to bring up my screen, and I'm going to share with you how, based off of the internal emotional state that you're in, you can perceive the same exact situation, but very differently. So when you're on this blast of oxytocin in the pseudo intimacy stage, what happens is you both are looking for similarities. You're both looking for the same things. So I'm going to bring up my screen here, and this is really how it works. I'm gonna go to paint here. I know a couple of you love paint. When it comes to experiencing intimacy, real true intimacy doesn't just acknowledge the similarities, it also acknowledges the differences. But when you're in that high oxytocin state and you feel really, really good, what happens is you only happen to notice the similarities, and then with that, with noticing the similarities, you forget about all the differences. But then when that high oxytocin state releases, as it will eventually, you'll get to a point where you start noticing the differences, and that's where usually trouble gets into the relationship. But we'll go into that a little bit later. So your internal state, your internal feeling state, really determines how you're going to feel in any given relationship. I just want to, guys, can you see my screen here? Can everyone see my screen? Everyone can see it? Awesome. All right, beautiful. So this is what it looks like. If you're in a high good feeling state, so let's take one situation here. So on the left, on the left side, we'll have similarity. I hope I'm spelling this right. And on the right side, we'll have differences. Differences. Beautiful. So let's say a person is in a really good feeling state. In fact, you know what? I'm actually going to take this to the next level, and I'm going to use an even better example here. Let's say on one side we have someone who's in a good feeling state. So we'll put good feeling. So they're high on oxytocin. They're in the beginning stage of that relationship. And let's say we have someone in a bad emotional state. Let's say one thing happens. Let's say your partner gets home and they're expressing themselves really, really passionately. If you're in a good high feeling state, you might have the thought, wow, my partner is a really passionate person. So you might perceive your partner, because you're in a good feeling state, flooded with oxytocin, you might perceive them as a really passionate person. Now, let's say you're in a bad emotional feeling state and your partner comes in and does the exact same thing, right? They do the exact same thing. They're really energetic, they're excited. Let's say you see them, but you're in a bad feeling state. In that moment, you are going to perceive them maybe as outspoken. Say, oh my gosh, you're outspoken. Or, oh my gosh, you're loud all the time, right? So it's the internal feeling state that is giving us our experience. So if your partner comes home and they're sharing with you all these thoughts and these emotions and they're really, really loud, but you feel really good on the inside, you're going to say, oh, my partner, they're just so passionate. Wow, what a great person. They're just really passionate. And then let's say you see them and you're in this bad mood for whatever reason. You're in a low mood, and you're going to perceive them differently because you're in that low mood. And then you say to them, wow, you're really being loud right now, or you're being really outspoken. And then you might get into a fight. So it's really the internal energy that you're experiencing moment to moment is what determines your perception. And this is what happens in the pseudo intimacy stage. In the pseudo intimacy stage, you're flooded with oxytocin. And so your brain is looking for all these similarities, and you just perceive your partner as perfect. You see them as just, you're walking on cloud nine with them. Oh, you're so happy. You just everything seems really nice. Oh, you're such a passionate person. But then as the relationship starts to enter its second stage, which we will get into, as it starts to enter the second stage, what you start to notice is you'll start to see the differences because you're no longer being flooded with that oxytocin. So really, it's your internal state. It's your internal state that determines your experience of someone. It has very little to do with the actual outside world. Does that make sense, everyone? Right. So a person who's really passionate can go from, oh wow, you're passionate, you're really excited, you're invigorated, I love that about you, to I'm in a low state, oh my gosh, you're really being annoying, or I don't like how you're being too outspoken and loud. I just want to break from you. So it's your internal state that always determines your experience. So the first stage of any relationship is always pseudo intimacy. Does that make sense, you guys? Awesome. Beautiful. So let's get into the second component of this. The second component of sorry, let me find it here. Okay. The second component of intimacy, stage 2, is chaos. Okay. So once the oxytocin starts to wear down, you start to realize that, my God, my partner isn't really necessarily the person that I think they are. Before I was seeing all these similarities. How do I get back to the honeymoon stage? How do I get back to seeing them as this amazing human being that they really are, right? So the couple is aware, at this point, you're aware that something needs to change and you want to get back to that feel good pseudo intimacy stage. Now, a lot of the times what happens is, and this is what I see so many with my clients who need relationship coaching, they want to get back to those initial good feelings that they had in the beginning, but they don't know how to get there. And so what they do is they put on a mask. And they put on a mask and they're not their true selves, just so they put on a mask and they just so they can have that, try to recreate that initial passion that they had. But then a lot of the times it doesn't work out. And so one of two things happens at this point. They either say that, you know what, I don't even want to go into this anymore. I'm just going to put on this mask. I'm going to wear this mask. I'm not going to be my true authentic self, because when I'm my true authentic self and I'm sharing my true thoughts about the other person, it just ends in chaos and argument. So I'm just going to put a mask and pretend. And then that pretend, what happens is when you pretend to be something that you're not, resentment slowly builds up on the inside. Are you guys tracking on that? So resentment slowly builds up on the inside. So that's stage two. Stage two is chaos. And if people don't like the chaos because now they're actually sharing their true thoughts and feelings about the partner, they'll try to go back into that pseudo intimate stage. But that doesn't necessarily work. So suddenly the couple is aware of this feeling and they say, you've changed. I need to get, where's the original you that I always knew? Are you guys recognizing this? Are you guys seeing this? Is anyone having some aha moments here? Awesome, beautiful. Yeah, a couple of you. And guys, if you like what you're seeing here, please share with anyone. I want this work to go out further. This is what helps people understand their human experience and creates less pain in the world. Hey, Loretta, good to see you. So that next stage is that chaos stage. And in that chaos stage, the illusions or the oxytocin comes down and we start seeing the people for who they really are. And that's not a fun place to be. Now, what happens is we start to struggle, we start to argue, we start to debate, we start to plead, we start to wish that we had that original partner back. But ultimately, we can never go back to that illusion unless we're willing to put on a mask. And if we put on that mask, we're slowly going to start to feel resentment towards our partner, which usually then brings us to stage three. Now, remember, at this point, the relationship looks like can't go anywhere. But actually, all of this is necessary to create intimacy. Now, some of you who have already worked through these stages, who are in intimate relationships, you might have worked past this. But the reality of it is, once you really work through all these stages, you can create intimacy with anyone very quickly because you understand that it's going to go through all these stages and you know how to manage it. So stage three is emptiness. So after the stage of chaos comes the feeling of emptiness. And this is the most painful stage and where most individuals think that they can't get past. At this stage, most people are thinking to themselves, I'm not going to be able to make it past this. I can't do this. I need help from someone. Please, dear God, someone save us. But the great thing about this is you're closest to having the most intimate, true, authentic relationship. You just have to get through the emptiness phase. There's a deep pit of emptiness in a person's stomach. And at this point, people feel like the relationship is lost. But this is where the true intimacy is you're really close to it. We recognize that we are nothing alike. We don't have a clue as to who that other person really is. Sometimes you might be getting thoughts that that person's really deceiving you, or they're not being true or honest. And this is where people can get really resentful. They can start to feel bitter. They might shut down. They feel deceived by their partner. And they suddenly feel like their partner's the devil. It's like, you tricked me. So the emptiness has to be weighted out in order for you to get to the true intimacy. Have you guys had this experience? I'm sure there's a number of you on the call who have had this experience. So when you get to this point in the relationship, It's so interesting to me because I've had couples come in and I've coached couples around this, and they're both telling me that the other person is the damn devil. They perceive the other person as not being honest, as being deceitful. When the truth of the matter is that you're perceiving your partner in that moment very differently. And the reason why you're perceiving them differently is just because you're both going through the emptiness stage. And your thoughts at this point, you don't want to trust your thoughts. The reality of it is human beings have good parts of them and bad parts of them. And true intimacy means accepting the good and the bad, but choosing to love them anyway. And note the word choosing there. It's a choice. Are you guys tracking on this so far? And guys, if you like what you're seeing here, please share with any family. Please share with any friends. If you haven't, go ahead and subscribe. I want this work to go further out there and create less pain in the collective of humanity. William, I'm going to get to that question later on. So William asks, is it self-deception? It is a form of self-deception, but we're not realizing it. We're going to unpack that a little bit more in the Q&A. So in the chaos stage, that's the second stage, we then go into the stage where everything is just this person was deceiving me. It's just pure emptiness. You feel like you were deceived. And it's so interesting to me because when I have a couple come in and they both share with me that their other person is not who they thought they were. But it's because they don't have the ability to perceive that person as a good and with good parts and bad parts. They want to hang on to just the good parts. But that's not true. Life isn't ideal. We don't live in a fairy tale land. It's not been the way that movies have been depicted to us. So the only way to true intimacy is actually to get through this emptiness space and realize that your partner never had an intention to deceive you. It's just that you projected onto them because you were in a high induced oxytocin state where you saw them as completely perfect. It's that simple. Does that make sense? So you have to move through this emptiness space. And the only way to do that is to accept the bad parts of them and to still love them for it anyway. Now, this is where true intimacy is actually experienced. We are no longer caught up in the projections of that other person, of ourselves. We see that human being for who they really are. We don't try to change them. We don't try to make them better. We accept them for who they are. And here's the ironic thing, everyone. When you accept a human being for who they really are and you don't try to change them, even if you're trying to do it in a good way. So for instance, one of my clients, they came to me and they said, well, I really love this person. So I tried to give them all this advice and I was really trying to help them out and I poured so much into them. And I said, well, did they ever really ask for that and want that? And they told me, they said, no, but I love them and I want to help them. And I said, sometimes the best thing, the most loving thing that you can do is let them figure it out on their own and just let them know if you need support at any time, I'm here to support you and love you. Because a lot of the times we love the people that we're close to. Obviously, we love our family, we love our spouse, we love our partners, and we try to help them by giving them advice or by trying to make something better in their life because we can see how we can help them. And it comes from a really good, innocent place. But the reality, the hard reality of it is human beings flourish best when they're not being told what to do or how to do things, but when they're given the freedom to explore and try new things, fully well knowing that they have support if they fall. So the best thing that you can do as a partner is to actually just give them the space to fail. It's the best thing that you can do. Does that make sense, everyone? Awesome. Beautiful. So the last stage of intimacy is true intimacy. It's when you're no longer caught up in the projections of the other person. You see that individual for who they really are, the good and the bad. You accept the good and the bad, and you don't try to fix either of them. And you allow them to grow at their own pace. True intimacy this is what true intimacy is. It's romance which is transitioned to disillusionment. Oh my gosh, my partner or person isn't the person that I think they were, to mature love. And mature love is, I love you, the good and the bad. And if you screw up, that's okay. I'm here to support you. And I'm not going to tell you how to do things or how to live or how to be. That's what true intimacy is. And when we live life from this place with our partners, I promise you, you will have a really amazing, satisfying, and beautiful relationship. Does this make sense, everyone? Awesome. Guys, what questions do we have? What questions do you have for me in this? And I'm going to go back to William's question here. So William asked, so is it self-deception? And he's talking about, is it self-deception when a partner shares with you something that, once they start showing their bad selves, were they deceiving you in the beginning, or were you deceiving yourself? It can be a mix of both. Okay. I've been in relationships in the past, and I've had clients in the past where people put on a certain front and they don't know that they're putting on a front because they want that relationship. So they put on a mask, they put on makeup, they put on parts of themselves because they actually want something from that other person, and they don't realize that they're manipulating the other individual. And then once you're waking up next to the other person and they're not wearing makeup and it's not all glamorous, you realize, oh, okay, this person wasn't the person that I thought them to be or who I perceived them to be in the beginning. But at the same time, you bought into that collective perception. You bought into the way that they showed up in the engagement. And so we're also responsible for it too. In any given relationship, there's two things that are operating. So I'm going to share my screen here again. I'm going to go back to paint here. In any relationship, there's always two things that are operating that we need to be aware of. So in the first part of it, I'm going to bring this up here, is perception, right? And how we perceive people is always done through the lens of our thoughts and our emotions. And our thoughts and emotions come from what we're seeing. So all three aspects come into perception here. So if a person is putting up a certain front, if they want you to perceive them a certain way, then they're going to dress up, put on perfume, show up, act a certain way, and you might start seeing them. You might start having certain thoughts and emotions and see them in a certain way, which might not necessarily be the full truth. So it's your perception of them, and it's the way that they have shown up in the relationship, which might not necessarily be how they are all the time, which determines the experience that you have of them. So in every relationship, there's always going to be two things right off the bat. The first thing in it is the perception right off the bat. This is my first perception of them, and that's going to be how they dress themselves up, their social self. It's, oh, you perceive me this way, but you haven't seen the deeper side of me. So it's like you almost see the front, right? The front, the first part of them. But then as the relationship deepens, it goes past initial perception and it actually goes into patterns. It goes into who they really are, which is the back end, the back or the subconscious. And where I see couples go wrong is they get caught up in the front or the initial perception, which seems really, really glamorous. Everything seems good. But then they get caught up and they get to the back end and the patterns, and they're like, oh my gosh, the perception of you on the outside was great, but your patterns were horrible. I want nothing to do with you. But true intimacy embraces all of this. It embraces the front aspects of the person, how they're being perceived, the front that they're putting up, but it also embraces the patterns, who they are at their core, the shadow. And it's up to you. You don't have to do either or. You don't have to show up a certain, like, you don't have to embrace the fullness of who they are. You can cut off the relationship at any point, but just know that true intimacy only comes from when you accept all aspects. I'm going to bring up William's questions here. William says, can you elaborate on codependency? In light of this dynamic, it sounds like codependency is two people living in self-deception trying to relate to the false self, whereas intimacy is true self-relating. Yeah, I think that's a great summary. Intimacy is saying, hey, here's the fullness of me in the front. Here's the back end of me as well too. Here's the perception right from the start. Here is the deception on the back end, and it's all here. It's all here. Take me as I am, all of it. And when you can accept that, when you recognize that, and that's all it means to live in truth. It's really that simple. When you accept the fullness of a person, the good and the bad, then that actually allows you to have true intimacy. So you got to get away from your ideal images of how things should look in order to get to the good feelings. And the good feelings are created by real relationship and true intimacy, where we're not living into a certain perception. One of the things that I see in a lot of relationships when couples have come to me in the past has been when they have that initial front in the beginning, there's a part of them that feels pressure to keep up that initial front. It's like, oh, I got to keep acting the same way. I got to keep acting this way. I got to keep acting this way. It's like, and it creates anxiety. I have to keep up the image. But true intimacy cannot show up until you let go of the image, and then you can actually get into true relationship. Does this make sense, everyone? Beautiful. Guys, if you like this and if this is helping you, please share with any family or friends. And also, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put it up there and I'll go into it right now, really. I'm going to bring up Robin's comment here. Robin says it can flip in an instant sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. It appears to flip in an instant because it's the first time that you're seeing it, but in reality, it was always there. It was never not there. But we get this experience of someone flipping really, really quickly because in that moment, we suddenly think, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this part of a person that I never saw before. But that was always there to begin with. It's just the first time that we're experiencing the truth of who that person really is. Does that make sense, Robin? Beautiful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to share them and I'll get to them. If you guys want to take it a little bit deeper, I'm going to put a link there. Go ahead and click on the link in the comment section. Also, guys, I got a lot more content on my website. You can look for things there and check out that. And there's a lot more other content there. Any other questions that you guys have for me? Awesome. Beautiful. Guys, that's all I got for this time. I want to give everyone a heads up. Robin, you can bring that question next time if you'd like. I just want to give everyone a heads up. I am doing a live with Laura tomorrow on YouTube. We'll be going live and we're going to do it specifically around relationships. So this whole next 3 months, the focus is on just building relationship, understanding intimacy, understanding sacredness. Yeah, you got it, Tracy. And the more we can understand how relationship works, the safer you're going to feel. Like all the anxiety that people experience in the world comes from not knowing how to relate properly, not knowing how to bond properly. But once we understand how to do that, everything becomes much easier and your experience of life is much more enjoyable. So for this whole next 3 months, we're doing Laura and I are doing a web series on sacred relationship and sacred sexuality. So if you guys would like to join that, please check out the link in the YouTube description box. And I'll also share the link here so you can register for it, so you can get notifications for when we'll be going live and everything that we'll be doing. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Be looking out for the live that Laura and I are doing tomorrow. I believe we are doing that in the evening. And that's just going to be on how conflict arises in relationship. And so if you want to understand conflict on a deeper level, what's creating it, and so you can avoid it and not have it come up, or at least manage it and deal with it, then definitely check out that live. Conflict is normal in relationship, and it actually can build healthier, stronger relationships in the long run. However, that being said, what we want to do is learn how to manage conflict and communicate in a way so that the relationship doesn't break apart. And Laura and I are going to go into this much deeper, because it's one of the things that we see is when people start actually speaking their truth and sharing with each other what they're really perceiving in the relationship, then all of a sudden those differences come up and that chaos stage happens. But that chaos stage is normal and natural. It's just knowing how to manage and work in that chaos stage that allows us to eventually move into true intimacy. I'm really glad it helped, Jeff. If you guys have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you want to get into contact with me directly, feel free to just click the link there. Other than that, that's all I have. I'll see you guys soon. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye for now.